you go record and just send a recording by email later, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that now. I got a recording as we speak.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, we'll stay formal then. So, how you doing, Mr. Dunn?
I'm doing well, Kenny Daniels. Dr. Daniels, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Well, welcome to the Dr. Kennedy Podcast. The Dr. Kennedy Podcast is sponsored by the Daniels Foundation for Impact Investments and Development. And I really appreciate you helping me out, Craig, and taking the interview at the last minute. And, kind of trying to foster some type of ecosystem of Black people communicating, networking. And so I think you probably get the idea. And you got a great story. So why don't we jump right in by you saying hello to the audience, just in general, and then, how you've been doing and what you've been up to.
Okay. Well, blessings, everyone. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you all. First of all, I really appreciate this opportunity. It's been, last time we've seen each other face to face, I don't even know how long it's been.
It's been a while, but I'm sure you was breathing down my neck. So I was glad to get you off me. And,
trust me, I understand.
About you other days that people realize how great an athlete you were, and so we need to get into a little bit of that because you were a specimen, really special. So I really want people to appreciate you, and we never really got probably full appreciation during our time period because it was so competitive and there was a lot of big names like Chapuka and all that. But I consider you right up there with Kelly. I don't know if you
that. That's a very high compliment.
I mean that.
My claim to fame is I did pin his shot on the backboard once. At Bloomfield. So yeah. So
one of the things I'm trying to do is, and a lot of people that this is kind of research for my second book called Black Camelot, and we were the first class of Black people that came from middle class Blacks, and so the question is, what happened from that investment that society made in Black people, and of course we know that the Black middle class grew, and you've done well, but we need to know where did the parents start from. So, did you live like your parent? Are you still living in creeks beyond your parents? Is about the same? Even though you may be better economically, are the traits of the family still the same, or something been lost, or have we regressed? So maybe you start off by talking about a little about your family background, where you come from, and then we'll get a little bit about your education a little later on.
Okay. Yeah, I actually grew up in Montclair, in what we call the Fourth Ward section. And the Fourth Ward section of Montclair was mostly blue collar workers.
Okay.
So my mother was a bank teller, and my father worked for Eastern Airlines. And so my father was former military, no college education. My mother, I went to the Rhode Island School of Design, which she didn't complete because she's on full scholarship too.
Wow.
She didn't complete it because she actually got pregnant with my sister. But so education was important in our family in terms of supporting it. But as far as like the college process, I remember a friend of mine talking to me in junior high, or when I was a junior in high school, and he was talking about guys from the war, and he started naming these guys I grew up with. He said, guys from the war don't go to college. And most of my peers that I grew up with in like junior high in that area, they all went to the military.
Right.
Then it was like, some guys I hung out with in high school, like Dow Robinson and Steve, it was right. Like college they were second generation, third generation college person.
Right.
I was basically.
Well, your mom, Rhode Island is pretty heavy, in
the 50s, it was a major for her to get a scholarship there.
Right.
Yeah.
Was she first generation, your mom?
Yes, because my mother's parents migrated here from Jamaica.
Okay.
And my father's parents came here from North Carolina, and they met in Montclair.
Interesting. That's beautiful. So let's talk a bit about your education. So, first of all, I want to know how did Villanova snap you up football-wise? Are you still happy with that decision? Because I'm sure, let us know, we could have gone to a bunch of places.
Well, here's the story about football, right, is that I only played varsity my senior year.
That's interesting, yeah.
And the only reason I played was because one of my best friends was the captain and called me a punk for not playing.
Who was that? Who was the guy who called you a punk?
His name was Kevin Williams, Kevin Guy Fly Williams.
And we thank Kevin. He gave you good advice.
Well, it's not just him. Another man in our community, Erwin Stamper, we call him Bebe. He talked to me for 2 hours after the MCAP game down Glenfield Park. And we talked about this on that, I guess, in that feed between me, you, and Steve, in terms of how Mr. Gibbs always built his basketball team around one player.
Right.
And he's like, you're not going to be that player, so you need to play football.
Gotcha.
And the high school track coach, Raymond Spivey, Coach Spive, he was another one that was like, look, you need to do this. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
And so I went out just to really have fun with my friends and making first team all state. And when the recruiters came around, it was kind of odd because in the 4 years I was in high school, no one that played football got recruited to a D1 school from Montclair High. During the 4 years I was in school, I was the first one.
I find it really amazing to give Mr. Rob and all that.
Well, that's another story.
Okay, we'll get into
Mr. Rob was an assistant coach under coach who didn't really, they didn't really champion their athletes. Like Coach Fortunato didn't champion the athletes.
Gotcha.
They didn't.
That's amazing. You mentioned that name. That's a classic Italian name in Essex County.
Right. And so I got recruited primarily because,
that's interesting. We have to talk about that.
Say it again?
Well, we have to talk about what the undercurrent, what you're saying there is there's an undercurrent. And so that name is a big name in terms of, I'll just say, African-American culture and non-African-American culture and promotion of excellence and opportunity.
Right. And so when you look at for that era, Montclair back in the 60s, in Montclair during that whole year, there were guys who and 50s, there were guys who went to from my neighborhood who went to great colleges. Right. But then somewhere in that early 70s, it stopped.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then all of that happened around busing too.
Right.
And they bust us from our community school to another school and kind of divvied up things because
so let's be explicit on that. Let's call a duck a duck. We're talking about racism.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Let's be clear to our audience, because what was clear to me is that a lot of times I go and talk to a lot of people about Essex County football and Belleville, and there are a lot of great white football players that went on to D1 schools. And they're very passionate. Like they're great white football players out of Barringer and all these things. And during that time period, maybe it's the case that maybe it's a two-way street, that maybe someone like Mr. Fortunato might have said that, well, he knew that the D1s were not looking for that. And maybe he would say he was just going with the system, or maybe he was promoted. We don't know.
Well, I could say I wouldn't put the brushstroke in terms of that, because you look at Barringer, when we came out of school, we had Andre Tippett, Byron McMillan, Reggie Davis, Richie Austin, Keith Hunter. All of them went to, pretty much their whole team went to a D1 school.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
And Andre Tippett's in the Hall of Fame.
Great name. There was a lot of good athletes.
Right. So you can't. I mean, from that perspective, then you have Dwayne Williams that came out of there. You had a lot of guys that came out of schools that were supposedly academically not on par with Montclair, but going off, because what Montclair would do is like that whole tracking system. Yeah, people who were in their third level class and getting C's, which is 1.2 grade point average on overall. Yeah. Right. So they were great athletes, but they weren't able to go to college because they weren't prepared. Gotcha. On the other side, for me, I was academically good in terms of doing my work and making an honor roll and things like that, as opposed to I just loved school at that point.
So let's focus on you. So you chose Villanova.
Yes.
You had a fantastic career there. But
I was there for 3 years.
The first question was, if it wasn't Villanova, who would it have been?
Well, actually, that's interesting. It would have been either North Carolina State or Northwestern.
Northwestern, that'd have been wow.
But what happened was,
that would have been hot, Craig. Northwestern would have been hot.
Well, see, what happened, I wasn't too familiar with the recruiting process.
Yeah.
who could I go to and talk to about that, right? So actually, I missed the signing deadline, and I had a great visit at Villanova, and I really liked the coach. It was Ken Baker.
Yeah.
So I ended up going there, but then going into my would have been my senior year, that spring practice, they dropped the program.
Right.
That's how I ended up at Ohio State.
Gotcha. Wow. So we gotta. There's so much ground to cover. Hour might not be enough.
Yes, I did 3 years at Villanova because I redshirted my freshman year, and I did 2 years at Ohio State. So I actually graduated from Ohio State.
Okay, I didn't know that. I don't know if a lot of people know that. That's good pedigree. So Villanova, was that Yankee football back then?
No, actually, it was non-conference. We were Division I AA.
Gotcha.
So we did play good team. I mean, we played Clemson, we played Temple, we played University of Maryland.
Okay.
Temple was like our rival game. Temple and the University of Delaware were like our rival games.
Gotcha.
We played Boston College.
How did Ohio State come out? So I guess you finished Villanova, and now you get recruited all over again.
Right. So I was looking at Minnesota, Iowa State, and then Ohio State. So after my visit to Ohio State, about 5 of us actually transferred to Ohio State, and so I ended up actually recruited by 2 coaches, Wayne Stanley and somebody you may know named Nick Saban.
Yeah, I know Nick Saban.
Yeah, Nick Saban.
Now, talk about the academics and the culture. So I know the culture of Villanova. So you were prepared.
Well, the culture of Villanova prepared me for Ohio State because you were expected to go to class, you were expected to learn, you were expected to maintain your GPA. One thing I noticed when I went transfer to Ohio State at that time was there were like a lot of guys who had played years before I got there that were still on campus taking classes.
Right.
I didn't understand how you could be, 5 years in school and 4 years from graduating.
Right. Well, that's a typical athlete thing. But tell me, what was I'm curious because so now you're not a senior, but you're like kind of like a fourth year junior.
Right.
Come to Ohio State with a senior saying, "This is my spot." That could have been some serious. Was the competition fair and friendly, or was it doggy dog?
Well, the competition was fierce, but what ultimately happened is my first year, Kenny, the guy I was competing with for playing time, his name is Vaughn Broadnax, asked if he can come home with me for spring break.
Yeah.
So, I had a homegirl who was on the track team at the time. Her name was Donathy Jones, and she had a car. So we come back for spring break. So he spends the week with me, and my parents and everybody just fell in love with him. Then we just became close from there. Then we started rooming together on road trips and things like that. And he's one of my best friends to this day. And the beautiful thing about it is high school friends and my college friends are friends.
Gotcha. Well, that's cool. So he basically was, there's more cooperation rather than competition.
Yeah, because you got to understand is that, like my senior year, my playing time was impacted because I had a class I had to take that met on Mondays from 6 to 10. And Mondays was when we watched the game film for the upcoming opponent.
Yeah.
I would have to, leave practice and go to class. So my thing was, I'm gonna graduate. So this is, don't play, but
right.
At that point, I was cool with that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that when you kind of get that senior year, you basically kind of know your path, and you still your heart is in it, but your mind may not be.
Well, you learned one thing about Villanova. It was more like they cared about you as a person.
Right.
At Ohio State, you were just you were like a product.
Right.
Like, are you going to produce? If you're not going to produce, next man up.
Yeah. Well, I understand that.
A lot of that had to do with too is that I realized that Ohio athletes were going to play first.
Really?
Yes.
You think it's still that way today?
No, right now, it has changed over the years because now it's the best person.
Right.
If you look at Chase Young came out of the DC area, Dwayne Haskins came out of the DC area. Stanley Jackson years ago came out of Passaic area, or Patterson area. So you had Jack Tatum, who came out of Passaic way back when.
Right.
So
that's why I produced a little bit more about competition. The whole TV thing's exploded. So competition.
But now, like, they're going to play because TV exploded. They're going to play the best player regardless of where they come from because it helps them recruiting in that state.
Right. That's really interesting. It's interesting you say that it's kind of parochial. We kind of broken down parochialism to now globalism.
Exactly. And because you look at college basketball. I mean, they're recruiting in Africa and Croatia and everywhere else.
And really, the entire American economy is going up. It was parochial. Now everything is global. We shift to a global economy and 24/7 news and constant markets. So that's interesting. So let's jump back into some of your childhood, adulthood as you kind of shifted. Because what's really interesting to me is that, well, I'm familiar with Montclair. I came up to Montclair a lot.
Yeah, I know. You were saying that, yeah.
And
you and Dad were homeboys.
Me and Dad were homeboys. And my father was the first black principal in Montclair.
Is that right?
At Duran School, yeah. My father integrated Duran School back in 1965.
Wow.
And so, I have a lot of affinity for Montclair. So, and we kind of touched upon was really a transformative time period of, East Orange was going from, mixed to all black. Montclair was in a trend. So, if you talk a little about, as you were a kid there, what were some of the transformations that you saw, and how that translated to, the school and dating and stuff like that?
I'll tell you, growing up in Montclair, particularly in our neighborhood, we never really had to leave our street.
Okay.
We had everything. It's funny. I rode down the street the other day, and I was thinking about the football goalposts when we played touch of the street. Like, depending on how many players we had, depending on which street light goalposts.
Right, the street light. That was it. Yeah, that was it.
We had like a long field and we had a short field. I just grew up in a neighborhood where we had a lot of fun. We had, it's like we played football behind this one church, the Methodist Church, St. Mark's. Went to summer camp at the Catholic Church, St. Peter Claver, and it's funny. I ran into Father Brady. He's no longer Father Brady now at my godfather's funeral a couple weeks ago, and I was saying, Father Brady, you think about it, we never had permission slips. We didn't have registration. We went on trips twice a week. Never filled out a permission slip. Never had a camp registration. But we knew that summertime, we had St. Peter Claver. I mean, it was another camp called Grassroots. Nobody in our neighborhood went to Grassroots. We all went to St. Peter Claver because we went on trips twice a week. And, none would play guitar.
Let me throw you a curveball because I love this guy. He's no longer with him. So my buddy and my backcourt mate at Fairfield, Bobby Hurt.
Yeah.
He was a neighborhood guy. Can you talk a little about Bob and what the Hurts meant to Montclair? And, I know you ran into him once or twice around there. Could he play football? Was Bobby a football player?
No, he wasn't. No. He played like Little League football. Because like when he was coming up, we actually recruited him to play on our summer league team.
Okay.
He was like he was in a junior in junior high school because we knew he was good. And I graduated high school with his sister, Robin.
Yeah.
Robin was brilliant. I mean, she was brilliant. And we knew his father, was a coach in Newark, I think at Central High.
Right.
So we knew Robert, and Robert and I we were close. We were close. Matter of fact,
so funny. And we played basketball. Bob, we would bring the ball court. He'd be like, Ken, take the ball. I can't. I'm tired. I'd be like, you better get over here. You the point guard. Stop shooting. He'd be shooting all the time.
Yeah. So when I served the church in Orange, he used to come to church all the time back then.
Yeah, but he was a special guy, and I forget what was his buddy's name? Heavyset guy. He would be all the time.
Rodney, yeah.
What's Rodney's last name?
Jenkins.
Rodney Jenkins. Him and Rodney, we used to have some good times together. So let's piggyback off that. So you kind of mentioned how we grew. So now, how do you think your kids are growing up, or how kids in our neighborhoods are growing up? I know we got technology and computers. So what do you think about, are we better off, not better off? You know, you see a lot of kids in church, you know.
I think the thing is that you know, kids stop learning how to go to the park and play.
Yeah.
You know, everything for them outside is like outside with a gaming tool or phone or something like that. You know, it's funny. I was riding through a neighborhood a couple years ago, and I just saw this kid sitting in a yard chair with a Game Boy. I said, his mother probably told him to go outside and play, and that's what he's doing. Outside playing for us was like we were active, you know, riding bikes or doing something, you know.
You know, something I haven't seen in a long time. Maybe I should do girls do hopscotch. They draw with charcoal on the ground and do hopscotch.
We actually painted we had a game we called ABC King. So we actually spray painted the ABC King in our street. So we got like a little, you know, whatever we needed, we just made it. We made it. You know, and I think that's the key. That the difference is we don't have neighborhoods anymore where people get to know their neighbors, because you know we moved from front porches to decks, and you could live next door to someone for years and not know your neighbor. So I grew up where, you know, we introduced a new person and came in the neighborhood. Even as our pastor in Madison, one thing, you know, a predominantly black church in a predominantly white town is, you know, we got to be stewards of the community.
Right.
If no one else is convening the community, then we have to be the ones to do it.
Right. So let's jump back to high school. So what are some of your fondest memories, classmates? Were you a funny guy, wild, crazy guy, or you quiet?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. If you read my yearbook, I was everybody's big brother.
Okay.
You know, it's funny because you go from being like the little kid on the block to being somebody who, you know, kind of like, you know, this is our school, you know, and we were serious. I mean, you know, we used to get dressed to go to school.
Right.
We didn't go up there like in sneakers and jeans and stuff like that. We had shoes, and sometimes we wore ties and suits to school. We were serious.
Yeah. You remember the name Elegance? We used to have a brand called Elegance. I don't even remember that.
Nah, we used to go to
that was the East Orange thing, I guess.
Because we used to go to Newark to a Universal's in Newark.
Universal's there.
You come to school, you know, somebody else had on your same hookup.
That's right. You know, I don't know if Newark Slip Company. Yes, back used to go there sometimes.
And that's, yeah, we never went out, just Universals, or on I forgot the place on Branford Place that we used to go to. But high school was fun. I just had a lot of fun in high school.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if kids have much fun as we do, because, you know, like I said, it was a lot more communal. You know, I think now it's a lot of, let me get in here, commute out, because I got to either work after school or something like that, you know. Right. I think there's a lot more demands. It's more competitive getting to colleges now, you know. So you might be a little worried about getting to a school.
I think back then we didn't even think about that. It's just, you know, it was more or less like how we, you know, just came to school and had a good time.
Right.
While we were doing our schoolwork.
All right. So let me throw you another curveball, but I gotta know the answer to this question.
What's that?
I played against Montclair in basketball a few times. So what do you remember of me as a player? And, you know, what were some of the things that Mr. Gibbs was saying as he's playing against East Orange basketball and so forth? I'm curious about the mindset.
No, the frustrating part about the whole East Orange basketball is a couple of two things. One is right? Y'all were relentless, right? Y'all played to win. Coach Gibbs coached us not to lose.
Right.
Right. So instead of using our height to the advantage, our athleticism to the advantage, he coached us like he was coaching lacrosse.
Right.
You know,
very conservative.
You know, it was all like this whole setup, you know, running the plays. I mean, that was one thing, but then he didn't know how to use us. He wasn't good at using the talent that we had. And I think that was like, you know, and then what happened, because he wasn't managing the talent, the unfortunate thing, like my junior year, that team was so dysfunctional You know, the senior year.
For the folks, let's describe the team. That so what I was going. So you describe your front five, and I'll describe our front five. You go ahead. So, or it was Craig Robinson, 6'8",
6'9".
6'9".
Yep.
Yourself 6'5".
6'4", now 6'4".
Greg Hines.
Well, Greg's coming off the bench at 6'8". Leonard Jackson 6'5". Trey Brown 6'8".
6'8".
You have Steve Taylor 6'2". Yeah, Kelvin Lewis 6'1".
6'4". Steve Taylor 6'4".
No, he's not. No, he's not.
Okay. All right. 6'2". All right. Give you 6'2".
Might be 6'3". Then you had Kelvin Lewis 6'1". Hurt at the time was like 5'10".
Yeah.
You had Bingo, who was another like 5'9", 5'8" back then, 5'7".
Got y'all had Bingo.
Right.
Now, now Eastern, you had Blue was 6.
Yeah, you.
Blue. I was 6'2". George Ramsey 6'2". So tell me, that's just the question. So how could Blue and I at 6'3", 6'2" battle 6'8", 6'9" constantly? Hard, really? I don't know how I look back. Not tell Blue, I said Blue. We must have been some jumping jackrabbits because I don't know how the heck we pulled that stuff off.
It's hard, man. It's hard because I tell you, my man Robert Cole would post up 6'9" guys.
That's true. He would.
He would get down there and in his mind, he would tell people, "Give me the ball. I'm 6'9" too."
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I met all of them through the East Orange youth games.
Right.
Because I played on the first youth games team. So I used to ride my bike from Montclair, East Orange High for practice, to Elmwood Park for games. Yeah. Then I would go over to the Friendship House in Orange to play a game, then back to Montclair to play MCAP at night.
Oh, you could do it then. You could. That's a lot of history there. You went through.
I mean, that's why I had so many friends.
You made a circle. And I forgot MCAT was at Garfield, right? The park.
At Glenfield.
Glenfield.
Yeah. So I mean, I had a lot of friends in East Orange and Orange, and so I just remember, like y'all came on the court, y'all was gonna win. And the funny thing is, I'm real close to Dale Colston.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Marianne Davis is one of my good friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so Marianne, after my 50th birthday party, she came by the house, and so she was telling my boys from Ohio about being the cheerleaders and stuff, right? Y'all had that cheer, Mercy.
Right. No Mercy.
So she had the nerve to tell my boy Lamar about that cheer. So every time I go to Ohio, I got to hear Lamar say, "What was that cheer? Mercy, Mercy." So I actually just talked to Marianne a couple weeks ago for her birthday.
Wow, she was interesting.
Yeah, just had a lot of, and I don't think Gibbs really understood the relationships we had off the court.
Right.
So his thing was that, if we lost the game, then we shouldn't be talking to you after the game.
Right.
Then we weren't taking it seriously.
Yes, yeah. That's interesting. All right, so I really want you to answer this question. So you went to a lot of good athletes in your time. Now let's keep it Essex County. So who would you put in the top 5 just athletes in Essex County?
During my lifetime or during my school years?
Any way you want to choose it. I'll give you some range.
Okay. Shucks. If a lifetime, then you got to talk about Aubrey Lewis.
Aubrey Lewis. Aubrey was nice.
That was Aubrey Senior.
Oh yes. Aubrey Senior. Okay.
Aubrey Senior. Who, first Black captain at Notre Dame. You got to talk about Lenny Coleman, who went to Princeton, Montclair, who was, I think, the American League president. Talk about Montclair. We always talk about these brothers, the Haynes twins from Montclair.
Oh man, you going back?
Yeah, I mean, these are people who were like, that were great athletes. There was another one person that was in Montclair that was like one of probably the best athletes. His name was Cecil Stinson. He played in like 75.
Stinson, oh yeah. Wasn't he a center?
No, he was a guard.
He was a guard.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you another athlete that was real great. He was a sophomore when I was a senior on the football team with Steve Puryear.
What's his name? Oh, Puryear. Oh yeah, Steve Puryear. Yeah.
We played y'all in old Martin Stadium. He caught a pass and held the ball behind him like this while he was running down the field. And the defender couldn't catch him. Yeah. That's how nice he was.
And some of the football games were classics.
Yeah.
These stars, Montclair. Oh my God! I remember one time we were up in Montclair. It was packed.
That was a junior year when the fight broke out.
Yeah, that was like, oh my Lord, you know.
I was with Blue. Some guys I was with on the basketball court at Montclair at Woodman Field. So I was like, man, y'all stay right here. They ain't gonna mess with y'all.
Right.
We let them all fight, but we stood right there until the fight died down, and we just got out of there.
But you know, I don't think we really appreciated the cohesion of the towns at the time. That those were they were cultural events, you know.
Right.
You know, it was more than a football game.
No, it was more or less in terms of just we knew each other.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, at least the athletes knew each other. The students may not have, but the athletes knew each other, and we had respect. You think about, we first encountered freshman year.
Right.
In basketball, freshman year, and I remember our guards couldn't bring the ball up court. Y'all kept stripping them.
Well, that had to be an experience for y'all KD Stars because we was in such good shape that I mean, like the press was phenomenal, and yeah. And I remember sometimes that we used to run so much that we would run till we throw up. That was commonplace.
We weren't into all that. I mean, it was more or less like we spent all our time going through the motions of doing plays.
Yes, we were
playing 31. We ran that probably like 500 times in practice.
Right.
So it was never really a strategy.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'll say it was just never a strategy to our game.
Yeah. But I'm getting back to the whole cultural stuff that's missing now. It's clear that because I'm going to kind of take the conversation in terms of community and what we need to see in terms of development of the Black community, because that's kind of where this book is headed, Black Camelot, is that in 1960s, it was a pretty dynamic time period. You think of, Motown, socially, you mentioned the dress, we were had nice style was important, and economically, it was a great society, Lyndon Johnson, it was Head Start. I remember Head Start in Montclair was a big deal. My father kind of spearheaded some of that, and some other people started did Head Start. And so it was a lot of investment in terms of human capital. And so we saw the benefit of that. And so, I consider you a friend, and you're kind of like a grassroots guy. So now we think about currently you have your ear to the floor, you're a pastor of a Black church in Madison. You talk about some of the struggles that you kind of see down in the Black community and what you see as some possible solutions and what roles does religion play in all that?
Well, the struggle now in the Black community is still always going to be education and classism, right? And now, particularly in Montclair, is gentrification.
Okay.
Because people are being forced out of the neighborhood because, the taxes in Montclair are high. So people are losing their properties for that. And you got people coming in that are all cash buyers that are buying up the neighborhood. So where you look at, like say for example, the area around Glenfield Park has changed dramatically in terms of social economic area, in terms of just the complexion of people in the park.
Right.
So you look at that aspect of it. Then you look at in terms of HUD eligible people, and you got third and fourth, fifth generation people on welfare. Well, probably third and fourth generation of people on welfare. Still that HUD eligible population. And so we spend more money on the latest gaming system or the latest technology, but we want to invest in our kids getting help. Help, so that's one aspect of it. And then a lot of times, we don't see parents who know how to advocate for their children. But what we found out, even with our Project Oasis summer program, is that when you look at the academic support program, part of that component of that program, it's the kids who come from out of town that are more apt to be engaged in that than the kids who live in town.
And what do you attribute that to?
Well, part of that I think is the air of entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people think because they live in Montclair that they've arrived, and Montclair is not this great place that people, you know, it's just another town. It's
Right.
not, just because you live here doesn't mean it gives you any status other than what you put in your mind. That's where the status comes from. But the status not come from your address. It comes from how you address your mind. And that's the hard part for a lot of people to understand. You know,
That's
you got
interesting
people
because I mean, clearly, I mean, even back then, it was, you know, the socioeconomics, even though each town has haves and have-nots, clearly Montclair has higher economics in terms of income equality and so forth.
yeah, I mean, in some parts of the town, but that's not the area I grew up in.
No, it's not homogeneous.
Right.
But, you know,
But
if we take that to school finances, for example, you probably could say that on average, the schools in Montclair were better than the schools in East Orange because they had higher property, that there was more income from the higher property values.
Yeah, but then again, when I was in high school, when I had my aunt's textbook who graduated in 1965, that's problematic.
It's problematic. Well, it goes to what you say in terms of the Fortunato effect.
Right.
So there's a lot of that went on, and like, and even to this day, a story that I'm told, which is Montclair related, is that I heard that Larry Doby is from Montclair. That's another great name.
Yeah.
And in Orange, they dedicated a park to Monty Irvin. Clearly, Larry Doby's on the same statue. Why doesn't he have a statue in Montclair somewhere?
Well, he actually has one by Branchbrook Park in Newark on Bloomfield Avenue.
Yeah, but he's from Montclair.
I know, but then again, you got to put one up for Yogi Berra.
Well, put one up for Yogi.
Yeah, but you know, Montclair, don't, you know, that's an odd thing. I actually eulogized Larry Doby.
Did you?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
because his son and I are close. Larry Doby Jr. and I are close.
So what was special about Larry Doby in his life?
You want to talk about him, man? You sort of remind again, like, you know, what I appreciate about him and like Orby Lewis Sr. is that what they did in the community, they did it quietly. They didn't have to publicize it.
Right.
You know, so Larry Doby, I used to preach at the church he attended, and he would come in, he would sit in the same spot, he was quiet, you know, go to his house, he had a spot where he sat, he was quiet, just, you know, loved his family, loved his wife, loved his children. You know,
I need to take some of that advice.
Real good man, you know, just loved his family and loved his, you know, never really, you know, didn't come across like, you know, hey, you know, I was great this, I was great that, I was the first, I was this, I was that. He just was a very humble man.
That's interesting. Yeah. So what about I know you're a pastor, and you like I said, really need more than an hour with you, but you know, what do you see in terms of the role? You know, religion is such a such a superfluous, or kind of in some ways is, particularly in our case. Let me take it this way. It's probably the most segregated day in America.
And you know, and some people got an issue with that, but I don't have an issue with that.
Well, fill me in. What am I missing?
Because here's the thing: there's some things in our context, right? From slavery, from Africa, in terms of worship experiences, and some things that are issues in our community that I don't think that, you know, a white church or Asian church is going to understand. They're not going to understand the trauma that we feel when there's a George Floyd incident.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're not going to understand the trauma when there's a Breonna Taylor incident. You know, whereas when we come together, we're going to understand that trauma is generational. It's like, when that museum opened in DC, that was such a big thing for us because it was like, it connected us to the trauma, but also connected us to the healing. So there's a healing space that happens in the African American church that some people may have it in a predominantly white church, but there's a different level for me in the Black church, right? Because there's some things that we just understand in our context that, and there's still some code language that we have in our church, that come from slavery. We still have code language. And the interesting thing is that sometimes when a white person joins a Black church, the church changes the identity to make that person comfortable.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Whereas what I heard years ago, unashamedly Black and unapologetically Christian.
I've heard that.
So for me, the church has been a place where, for my own personal healing, and I've seen how, like for us, even in Madison, how we're bringing healing to the community. We did something on June 6th where we had a social distance gathering where we actually prayed for the police after the George Floyd incident.
Right.
And we had, Florham Park Police, we had Chatham Borough Police, Madison Police. We ended up having like 200 plus people from the community actually came to pray for our congregation. In this big field called Dodge Field in Madison. So for some people, because of our educational background and things like that, we think that the Black church is beneath us, or we think church is beneath us because we're spiritual, but we're spiritual, we're not religious. But we don't have a true North Star. Without God, there's no true North Star. There's just everybody does what's right in their own eyes. But what I find at the end of the day is that, no matter, everybody mad at the church, everybody hate the church, but you know what? You want to get married, they're gonna call me. Somebody die in their family, they're gonna call me. Right? When they're going through stuff, they want to call me. Right? They want to come to the church when they have problems because they know that whatever is on, something ain't working. Right? So people put the church on the back burner, but the church is what actually got us through slavery, got us through civil rights, got us through Jim Crow, got us through the nadir of Black America, that period between slavery and civil rights.
So this jump start in terms of Black Lives Matter. That's kind of a nice segue to that. So,
well, that's a whole different conversation.
I know, but it's
for me.
Well, tell me why it's different. Why is it different?
For me, I a lot of people don't understand the difference between the tagline, and the movement.
I get it.
Right? So a lot of people understand the tagline, right? But they don't understand what the organization is about. Because it's really not a true organization. It's just local chapters, and everybody does some things like that. And so, and there's a lot of young people who don't, even the ones in the area where I serve, they don't really understand the lay of the land. They come with a lot of things, but they don't do any research in terms of, say, for example, if they go into Chatham, when they go into Chatham with a mindset that, okay, it's a white town, blah, 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 without understanding that, the past mayor was Black. They got a Democratic council. So they don't understand the lay of the land. So, but for me, Black Lives Matter, I mean, that's just the lowest common denominator. Just be concerned about me. But I understand it as a tagline, and I support the tagline, but the movement is something altogether different.
Right. So I think you made a very important point there that, to me, it's I think key thing you said that there's a lowest common denominator, or we call it, minimum standards, right?
The minimum standards.
Black Lives Matter is a minimum standard, and we should be shooting for excellence.
Right.
And the question for me is that, okay, after we get past police reform, what's next?
Right.
And will there be a what's next? What do you think?
Well, I think we have an opportunity to bring healing, right, to the communities. Because if you think about it, right, we come from a history of some of our grandparents or parents or someone in our family was a domestic who raised white children. Even now, you got white kids in Brooklyn who speak patois, right, because of their Jamaican housekeeper, right? So there's a generation of people who understand culturally that these people of color, African American descent people, have been instrumental in their formation and development, right? And so we come in a legacy of that we were foundational to some of your development, right? We're foundational to the creature comforts you have in life. The ironing board, the traffic light, the cotton gin, the super soaker water gun, this vaccine that everybody's talking about. It was a sister that discovered that led the team on that, right? So we have given you a lot of things that creature comforts, and so we can't get caught up in the fact that you try to crush us down, because no matter how much you try to crush us down, we still rise up, right? And so it's imperative for the church to be the one to take the lead. It's imperative for government organizations to come together and look at not how we addressing the problems, but where the opportunities for us to come together and really make this a better place to live, right? Because we can focus on the problems, but we've been focusing on poverty and all these things all along, and we still got poverty, we still got social issues, we still got health issues. So what are the opportunities that we can make these things happen?
Well, let me throw out an idea, and it's actually a criticism and an idea all together. So the church does so much. It's childcare, it's a bakery, it's a bank. In some ways, the church is a substitute for a lot of things that we should have in our community. So we should have banks, we should have bakeries, we should have entrepreneurship. Do you think that we need to have more institutional development and kind of make sure the church just focuses on pastoring, or should the church be one all and be all?
Well, you got to think about this, right? You know why there's steeples on churches?
I don't know.
Steeples on churches, if you look at any landscaping picture of back in the day before skyscrapers, right? The tallest building in the town had the most importance.
Yeah.
They put the steeples on the churches so you could see the church from anywhere in the town.
Okay.
Right? Our communities were defined by the schools and the churches.
Yeah.
As an outgrowth of those two institutions came the banks, the businesses, and everything else.
That's right. Okay, I get it. Uh-huh.
Right? So when you lost that piece of it, right? Because we lost the spirituality and we lost the education.
Yeah.
So now when I look at you and you, Dr. Kenny D, is going to start opening up a black bank, I don't trust the fact that you're going to be good steward with my money.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. So if you, Dr. Kenny D, have a construction company, I'm not going to trust you to build my house. Mm-hmm. Because the one thing they did well was to cause us to be suspicious of one another.
Right. I follow. Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about socioeconomic status, then, we had to do those things because we didn't have that. And when we did have it, Black Wall Street, they blew it up. They bombed it.
Right.
Look at Harlem Renaissance. They tore the neighborhood. They infiltrated the neighborhood with drugs. Right. Drugs and guns. So anytime there's progress, there's going to be opposition.
So you think if let's say we're successful, we get into another revival, Black Renaissance, you think there'll be retaliation again? You think we're still in the same place?
It's right where we are now.
Okay.
What do you think MAGA is about?
I'm asking the question because I want you to expand. So
yeah, I mean we're
the case, because a lot of people say, and I won't play devil's advocate, but I'll just give a counter argument saying that, well, it's not that they're retaliatory, it's just that they actually are providing a different avenue that we should join, which is capitalism and so forth. And, I don't know if you're familiar with O'Berry Hendricks.
Yeah.
But,
he was one of my professors.
And I love to get him on because, he's basically, following something that you're saying that we lost a lot when we went this capitalistic route. And so therefore we didn't trust, and Black Wall Street, we kind of coalesce under one roof, whatever that one roof may be, we're successful. And anytime we go mainstream, we have problems.
Right.
And what MAGA is saying that, well, that was then, but now it's different. And you're saying it's not different.
No, think about this, right? You brought up the 60s earlier, right? So we lived through a generation, an era of assassinations, right? Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, right? Medgar Evers. We lived through assassinations, right? We also lived through the Newark riots, right? And the Newark riots, when it spilled over into outside of Newark, into Montclair and other places, right? That's when people started, that's when stores became gated.
Right.
Right. So now the friendly neighborhood store is no longer friendly.
No, it's not.
And so now it was like you couldn't go into the different store because you had to wait for the gate to open. Right. And then as you know, it was closing. Why? Because the gate started shutting.
Right.
Whereas before, you might have got there like at closing time, you could have knocked on the glass and they would let you in. But now we got to be safe because I don't trust you. And that mistrust spilled over in the community because we just follow everybody else's lead.
Right.
Right. So now when you look at it, is what I appreciate now is the young entrepreneurial spirit where people are starting, barbershops and all kind of different little boutique businesses and things like that, which is good. And they're getting support from the generation. Like my nephew is in Atlanta and he's in music. He said that the thing about him being down there, like when they have an event, the people in his circle support the event by paying whatever it costs to get in there, right? If you have an event here, you got a whole list of friends be like, yo, Kenny, man, hook me up. They don't want to pay to get in.
Yeah, it's gonna be. Tell me, I'm doing the foundation. I know. I'm begging.
Right, and so so even with that is and I just pointed this out to my church, right? We used to do like fish fries and things like that when I first got there to raise money. By shifting the mindset from selling things to serving the community, we have a food pantry because the food insecurity is great in the community. We have taken in more in the last 8 months than we did in the 6 years I was here prior to this, because we shifted from selling to serving.
Right. Support, I get it.
And I think that's the whole part of it is that, we don't teach people that service is above making the money, right? Because when you provide service, the money's going to come. But if you focus on the money, then you're always looking at how I'm going to cut corners, how I'm going to do this, how I'm going to do that, as opposed to providing excellent service.
What's the point? That's why I'm a nonprofit. I want to serve. It's not about the money anymore. Like, what does $5,000 do for me?
But you look at some of the agencies, particularly in Montclair, right? They'll do a banquet,
Yeah.
right? You do the banquet, you're going to raise $60,000-$70,000 to host the banquet. Your net might be 20. That's good. That's if you do silent auction, raffle, something else. You might make that money, but for the event itself, your net might be 5,000. But you put in all this effort to make the venue rich. So if you're going to do something in terms of economic development, have a catering business, catering venue.
Right.
For people, weddings, funeral receptions, whatever. We don't have a black-owned one of those in the area.
No, it's amazing to me. Of all of New York, New Jersey, the lack of black businesses is astounding.
The closest thing you have to a black catering hall is Sandwiches Unlimited in Orange.
Yeah, closest. And that's phenomenal. You think of all the sandwiches we eat.
Right.
Crazy. And not only that, sandwiches, pizza. But a lot of that is done, over as you mentioned, it's generational. Didn't happen overnight. It's not going to be fixed overnight.
Right.
And that's kind of what you and I are talking. We're trying to have that discussion for the next generation that hopefully just by someone sitting down with a young African American man, seeing us talk, can see some positivity. And, in addition, there needs to be dialogue, but all these issues that we're talking about need to be dialogue and built upon,
Yeah, we started looking at developing a 501c3 through the church as an entrepreneur incubator.
Yeah. Because
we have a lot of people in our church that have a lot of skills, things like that. So how will we help them start their own businesses where they can, we got a guy that can fix anything. So how we legitimize his business? So he's, he has a company.
We should have to the Daniels Foundation. That's the answer.
Yeah. So that's
but like you said, the Daniels Foundation can't do without support. It's not like I can wave a magic wand until we start supporting our own. You assume that another way that we build it, will they come? Well, it's kind of like a cart before the horse kind of thing. That we have to show that we can demonstrate and deliver, serve. But you would think that after we, for example, you still mentioned your food pantry, you clearly shown that you can serve. Why did somebody step up and allow you to expand that? It's a no-brainer.
I mean, I think what's happening now is that's our next level, right? Because I got an email today from someone who wants to contribute. I mean, just in the last 2 days, we've taken in over $3,000 just in the last 2 days.
Right. That's great.
People and that's separate and apart from the food donations.
Right.
And part of what I'm trying to show, sometimes in the congregation, you got to show people that you start doing, right? Don't wait till you have all the resources in place. Just start doing, and everything else will come.
Right.
For
example, that I'm trying to do. Well, we're coming up on an hour. This has been fascinating. I want to thank you. But I got a couple questions, and I'm gonna let you take us out. So, what are some of your hopes and dreams for the future? And what do you see yourself doing maybe 5 years from now? You're gonna retire? What's gonna be your second act?
Well, I'm in my fourth act right now. I spent 30 years in publishing.
Okay.
Right? And so I left there and went to the ministry full time. I worked for USA Today. I used to work for the New York Times. And
wow.
I worked for Internet. I spent 17 years at the New York Times. I spent 11 years at USA Today. And I spent 2 years at an international company. And my career was mostly in education sales or business development. So in the international company, I was the one who was starting the US business.
Gotcha.
So, but then I left that job and went to the pastoring full time. So I've gone through school, and I'm actually right now in the process of completing my doctoral ministry degree.
So let me interject there, because I've kind of gone through the spiritual awakening, which has been interesting. You know, as you mentioned, it usually happens when you fall down in your luck, and that was my case. What was your spiritual awakening?
Well, my grandfather died when I was 28 years old.
Okay.
You know, he was the closest. We were real close. That started me going back to church. That started me just down this road, and I was actually thought I was on my way to law school.
Okay.
So I was taking the LSAT at Montclair State, and I left the test, and went to talk to my pastor at the time, and told him, I said, pastor just took the test. He's like, Dunn, how'd you do? I said, I think I did all right, but that's not why I'm here. So that was in 1991, and I preached my first sermon 2 days after my 31st birthday, and had started seminary that September, and been in it ever since.
That's a beautiful story, man. That's
my whole life I wanted to be a lawyer.
That's a very mature choice at that time. You kind of, it's kind of like you said, you do capitalist or serve. And in some ways, it's you're still doing both. I mean, it's not like you're kind of still a lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely advocating for some folks. Right. I have got some people out of trouble.
Yeah, minister, you wear a lot of hats, doctor.
Yeah, trauma physician.
Oh, I know you got stories to tell. I'd love to sit down. I owe you dinner. So anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe we get off the cuff topics, and talk about my boy D. Rob. I think he's also a minister these days.
No, he's a deacon.
He's a deacon.
Yeah, he actually joins us every Sunday for Sunday school.
That's my man, and I run into him in Baltimore every now and then, and we have some great conversations, and just so many memories, man. It's just like I tell friends I still know people from kindergarten. D-Rob, people like you, they're like, you still know all those friends? Like, yeah, I know all these guys.
Yeah, I mean, but think about like man, I used to see over the summer, I would see Eric McGee in the park walking around.
Yeah.
I saw Darren Hammond out there from Orange out there walking around. I got to know very well Mrs. Moore, George's mother.
Yeah,
after George had passed away, I just started going visiting her at her house and stuff, because I knew her husband, Lenny Moore, from track in high school. So I got to know Mrs. Moore. She was like another mother to me. So just like those relationships. And Charles Blue's father was a deacon at a church in East Orange, so I got to talk to him. Last time I ran into Charles was in New York one day when I was working at the New York Times, he was walking by the building. So I mean, think back to like the relationships we've had. We competed, and we know we never beat y'all, but off the court, well, we did beat y'all in football, so I can own that. But off the court, we have relationships that went deep.
I know, it's beautiful. Well, Craig, I want to thank you for the hour, and I thank you for helping me out, technology-wise. I appreciate the email. I'm sure you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I think we need to come back, maybe a panel. Like, it'd be great to have you and a few other folks to expand on some topics. I really think that we can mine a lot of good things here in terms of initially awareness. I think that's the easy, low-lying fruit. But I think institutionally, and maybe in terms of fundraising, I think maybe there's some money here that you can just say, okay, folks, this is actually good stuff. There's something here that you need to support this with some dollars. I think there's enough people out there might get that. So maybe we can build on that in the future. We can do that conversation over there. I appreciate it.
Let's make it happen.
All right. Well, thank you, my friend. Happy holidays.
Same to you. Talk to you later.
Later. Peace.